try me.
This is your destiny.
I was born ready.
Are you sitting down?
Is that all you got?
I'm just getting started.
Cover me. I'm going in.
No. Come in, D. Taylor was just leaving.
We've got to stop meeting like... Sorry. My bad.
We've got to stop meeting like this.
Well, if it isn't Kenny...
I'm just doing my job.
You'll never get away with this.
Watch me.
Now, where were we?
How hard could it be?
You go, girl.
What part of girl don't you understand?
Don't go there?
Is this some kind of sick joke?
Oh, haha, very funny.
Wait, did I just say that out loud?
It's just a scratch.
How is he?
He'll live.
And there's nothing you or anyone else can do to stop me.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Note to self.
What seems to be the problem, officer?
What's the worst that could happen?
I have a bad feeling about this.
Don't you think I know that?
Whatever you do, don't look down.
We got company.
Oh, this is not good.
Awkward.
What just happened?
We'll never make it in time.
Stay here.
No way, I'm coming with you.
Try to get some sleep.
Wait, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like.
That's it, you're off the case.
In English, please.
What are you doing here?
I was about to ask you the same thing.
This just gets better and better.
Shut up and kiss me.
Not on my watch.
You just don't get it, do you?
It's called a podcast, Taylor. Maybe you should try it sometime.
Guys, that went well.
Those were cliche lines.
Speaking of cliche, we just saw Pacific Rim 2 Uprising today.
You want to be in pictures.
Which in itself is a cliche.
So the reason we got pulled into that wacky experiment was because we, since the first trailer of Pacific Rim Uprising, we've been talking about and laughing at how many one-liners it had in the trailer.
The trailer had like
it was just one after another,
Yeah,
after
one-liners.
another, after another.
Yeah.
It's like a checklist.
That's what I'm talking about. I could get used to this.
Yeah.
I think we pissed it off.
Yeah.
Oh, he's big. You know. But the trailer was nothing compared to the actual film.
Yeah, it was shocking, actually.
And
Dude,
go ahead.
this film was 100% cliches.
And it raises an interesting question for me. In 2010, 2012 that Avatar came out?
I think that was like 2009 or 8.
I feel like it was 2009.
Okay.
2009.
2009.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, Avatar is arguably an extremely cliche movie.
Yeah.
Right, Dances with Wolves kind of thing.
Yeah. And yet that movie in many ways works very well. I thoroughly enjoyed Avatar the first time I saw it. This was a very cliche movie, but I could not bear it. It was so hard to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely was.
So why
What's the difference?
what's the difference?
Yeah.
Why do we let some cliches pass? Some cliches clearly have a place in our storytelling world, right?
Right.
And some just don't fit the bill.
Well, I think specifically with your Avatar comparison, Avatar had a very clear objective with what they're trying to do with that film, and that comes through in probably the visual effects and creating this like incredibly immersive world, which, by the way, that 2009 film has visual effects that are probably 5 times better than the visual effects of Pacific Rim 2.
Yeah, I think that would come through the budgeting, though.
Yeah,
Because
maybe that's true.
The
That's
respective
fair.
budgets are pretty different.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are. I understand that over the entire lifetime of the project, more than $1 billion went into Avatar.
That's true. But that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, but I could say, I mean, like the short.
Almost.
I'll do this for every film. The short film that we saw, the 3rd and the 7th,
Yeah.
had better visual effects than this.
It did.
Yeah.
And that was free. So
And some guy made that on his own.
yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
definitely that.
Pacific Rim 2 has basically no vision whatsoever, aside from the original vision that Guillermo del Toro had with the first film. And so it's that vision, which in my opinion I wasn't a huge fan of to begin with, then watered down even further by this I don't know, just a cash grab on some kind of
That's what it felt
IP
like. I don't know. Yeah, it was because the world itself was evolved so well. Like they had definitely, you know, a universe that this takes place in. But I think because it spent so much time in just kind of muddling around inside the world, that they didn't really, because they didn't have a vision, they ended up just using whatever they could to move the movie along, which is every cliche in the book.
right.
Well, so another example I would pull out is Toy Story, which is an absolutely beloved film. Many people think it's a perfect film. It's extremely charming. And yet it's also very, very, in terms of the different pieces of the story that you're seeing happening in front of you, it is in itself its own way of cliche. But we don't mind because it's charming and it's fresh.
Yeah.
We don't mind in Avatar because it's innovative and it's fresh. This was just stale, right? Just incredibly stale. And whenever one of these cliches happened, there was just like an audible groan.
Yeah.
Usually coming out of me, but sometimes coming out of others in the audience as well. Like it was just like, oh, really? You know, my favorite one was like I could almost say the words before the scientist character could say it. You know, he had hinted at the very beginning of the movie that he wanted to attach a new special rocket system to the giant robots, Jaegers, and but that, you know, it was in development. And then of course later on you find out they're going to need those rockets. In the end, they really didn't need those rockets.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, but they're going to need those rockets, and they say, "Hey, what about your rocket system?" And I'm like, "Oh, here it comes." And he goes, "What? They're not ready." and then they give one small protest, and then he goes, "Okay, let's do it anyway." You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, how many times have we seen this before?
Yeah, I think it's due to being organic.
It hasn't been tested yet. You know?
when you have something that's like, when you have a vision of something, right? It doesn't matter if that vision has been done over and over and over. This time it's your vision, right? And this time you're doing it. And we know from the book Hero of a Thousand Faces, or Hero with a Thousand Faces, is that every story is derivative. You know, every single one has already been done, and that it's just, you know, your take on it, your take on it, your take on it. And it's just
Taylor's aren't. Taylor's movies
aren't stories.
They're not derivative.
Those aren't stories.
Yeah, that's fair.
Those are films.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right.
But yeah, so they don't have an interest in growing anywhere. They have, at least this movie, it doesn't have an interest in growing. It doesn't have a master vision. All it is just, let's get to the fighting. How do we get to the fighting? And then how do we go on from there? You know what was interesting was like the parts in this movie that had the least, well, maybe even the most amount of cliches was the fighting parts.
Yeah.
And it actually felt like the most real part of the movie to me.
Really?
Yeah, those parts, the very, 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 very beginning, just some parts where you're just like, oh, that's a good movie, but then it goes on from there. Yeah, and I really think it's a lack of vision.
I agree. Yeah, I think I did notice that the action sequences were a lot more cliched dialogue-wise. The whole film is cliched dialogue-wise, but especially ramped up during action.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's hard to buy into that because all the one-liners are so sarcastic, and it's like, how are these people just constantly sarcastic in this life-threatening
I mean, I've never been in
situation?
combat, but I just wonder how many soldiers like look to their buddy right before they go face oncoming fire and say, "Here we go again." You know,
it's like
I just don't think that's happening.
No,
maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think you are.
There was a thing that this guy said in it was John August said in Script Notes podcast, that he's like, if the characters know what's going to happen, then the movie is boring, right? The writer needs to know what's going to happen, but your characters can't.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it seemed like every character knew what was going to happen next, and we're just seeing what happens until they get there.
So, I find that it's actually a challenge to avoid using cliche dialogue when you're writing, right?
Why is it?
And writing dialogue's hard. Writing dialogue's like the hardest part of a screenplay, always.
Because you're trying to imitate real people,
real
organic
paper,
conversation,
which is not real, right?
And very consciously too.
Yeah, and so disguising something that's made up as something that's organic is much harder than most people think. And we're very influenced by things we've seen before, which is why there's a way people talk in movies that is acceptable that you don't speak that way in real life, right? With few exceptions, some filmmakers make movies that have just very real feeling dialogue. I'd say Aaron Sorkin is one of those.
Ooh, I wouldn't say that at all.
You wouldn't say that at all?
No.
Why is that?
I'd say his dialogue's completely fake.
Why?
Like, I'd say like every single, like he wrote Social Network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's the guy that I'm thinking about. The way he writes dialogue is so winking. So, hey, aren't I smart as a writer?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't.
But he is smart as a writer.
Oh, absolutely. I love his dialogue. I just don't think it's
teaches
realistic
a
at all.
master class.
Which he shouldn't, by the way. I have a whole thing about master classes. I think those are stupid.
What? I was gonna say we should do a master class. Hi, I'm Kenny, and I'm your new teacher.
I have a whole thing with that, man. We can do another podcast on it.
All right. Paul Thomas Anderson dialogue.
I like, for the most part, Paul Thomas Anderson's dialogue. For the most part.
But even then, people say more in a movie than you say in real life.
Well, they say how they're feeling.
Right. And I think there's way more inference that goes on in actual human conversations in the real world. Communication is going on through body language and eyes and our knowledge of each other's back history and all that kind of stuff. And the conversations that we've had beyond the 2 hours of...
Yeah. And it has so much intricacy that you're saying that cliche lines are so easy to do because they don't rely on context.
Yeah.
Is that why?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it almost just feels automatic, right? When you're writing and you get to a point where someone is supposed to be shocked by seeing their father, who they thought was dead, is there sitting in front of them, you just feel like you have to write, that's impossible. Right? That's what a character is supposed to say.
Right.
It's not possible.
Right. Whereas in real life, you would think that, but you wouldn't probably say that.
No one says that's impossible, but it's in every movie.
Right.
Like every movie says that's impossible. It's been at least 6 or 7 times since we've started the Talkies that we've been in a movie where a character said that's impossible, and we all looked at each other and chuckled because
you just noticed it.
It's like our joke now.
Right. Or it's the line of dialogue followed by a further explanation of what they meant before.
Right.
Even
and
Blade Runner falls into that one.
And and again, like if you're writing a book, you can write 6 paragraphs about what is going on in a character's mind upon discovering that her father's still alive.
Right.
Where in a movie, you've got it's so much easier to have something come out of their mouth, even if they're not talking to another person.
Very much.
You're dealing with time at that point too, because in a book you can take the time to write out all the thoughts that she had in that moment. No matter how long it takes for you to read it or how long the paragraph might be, it doesn't really matter. But with a film, you can't just dwell on a moment for so long to get the proper emotions across because it's real time. You have to get it across initially with acting and stuff like that.
And especially with things like action movies that are heavily involved in what's going to happen. You kind of need people to talk in more descriptive terms and less talking.
And right on the nose.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's like, okay, you just got punched in the face, you fell on the ground, and you want to get across that, you know, I'm not going to take that and I'm going to spit it back in your face. Well, can you do that with a body gesture, with a look on the face, or are you going to have him say, "Is that all you got?"
Right.
Right.
Right. It's the easiest thing to do.
It's the easiest thing to do, but it also it doesn't make your movie fresh. It makes it stale.
Right. And another thing is that if you do have a vision, right? If you have a direction in which you're going and that you want all your movie to be wrapped up in, then you can easily avoid those things because you don't mind delving into the cinematography to do the work for you, you know, in certain areas. Like if a person gets punched down on the ground and you have a vision of this person's growing, you don't mind dabbling in, you know, in that sequence a little bit and kind of getting that scene and making it a little longer if you need to.
Yeah.
Rather than just be like, okay, well, let's write that all you got and then let's move it on.
Yeah.
Don't need to do that.
So I guess, but the case of Pacific Rim 2 is very, very designed for the negative. Studio kind of rushing it along, saying, "Hey, here's the deadlines. We need this movie now." I don't care what you write. Just make it action. Make it this. Make it witty.
And typical sequels will have things like that.
Yeah.
Because it is more or less a cash grab.
I honestly felt this had more life to it than a Transformers sequel.
Yeah,
it did.
I didn't feel that too. There were some personality traits in there.
There were some it had some moments that I thought kind of worked. If I didn't already know that this was going to be a bad movie, I would have had high hopes coming off of the very first sequence. Because the very first sequence was super interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Where he's talking about life post Pacific Rim 1. He's living in this mansion, half a mansion, that had been crushed by a fallen monster. The skeleton is still there. And they like gave us this tease of a really interesting world, this weird economy where he's smuggling like high-end goods. He's stealing high-end goods like sports cars and trading them for cookies. You know? And he his first lines in the movie were about candy, cookies, and hot sauce. And then, like, his second major dialogue scene later in the movie is over him eating a bowl of ice cream with tons of toppings on it. And it was like they had this character idea that he's, like, driven by food. And it just never went anywhere.
Well, they just dropped it and instead inserted, like, again, a cliched caricature of the hero leader.
Yes. He shifted to cliche hero pretty fast, and he was more interesting as this sort of like misfit who will never live up to his father's image.
Which is funny because he did. Right?
Yeah.
Well, but that's the
cliche.
By
accident,
but that's the cliche. The cliche is the misfit son who thinks he'll never be what his father was, and then ends up becoming what his father was. Whereas a more interesting story would have been he succeeds despite not being his father.
Right. See, that would be a more interesting story.
I mean, and he found his own way to inspire people and to take down the monsters.
But instead, he just became
Idris Elba.
Yeah. It was funny because he was making a speech for them, and he's like, my father would probably make a speech right now.
And then he made a speech.
And then he's like, but I'm not my dad. And then he makes.
And then he made a speech. Yeah, you are your dad, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah, that's weird. That's terrible, actually.
Yeah. The only thing that made this movie worse than its cliches were the Deus Ex Machina moments.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was filled with those.
The most hideous, grotesque one was this completely unexplained, no context, no information method of releasing these weird robots that just ran out, jumped onto 3 monsters, and welded them into one giant monster.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's like, where did this... He's like, they're beating my monsters. Let's throw this at them. And he pushes a button and releases these little...
I wouldn't call that Deus Ex Machina, though.
It had no explanation at all.
I think I think okay. Well, personally, anyway.
Why didn't he do that in the beginning?
Personally, I can forgive something like that because
I don't forgive. I will not. No,
you won't forget either.
I will not forgive, and I will not forget. That's a cliche line.
There's something that I read in some script writing book about how you can have like random things happen to put your people in danger, but you can't have random things happen to get them to safety, because otherwise it feels like cheating. Well, you wouldn't agree?
No, that I agree with that, but that's not what happened in this movie.
And during that part,
yeah,
I would say by happenstance.
That's not a random thing happening. It's a thing that the villain did.
Oh.
But the fact that the villain had that in his back pocket was Deus Ex Machina.
I don't think it was.
You're wrong.
I disagree, and I am right.
I agree with Kenny.
2 against 1?
No! Mate.
We move on.
You must change your opinion now, dude.
I agree.
See? That's how we work here at Carmen Line
That
Studios.
was Deus Ex Machina.
Thank you.
Mate.
Okay, so is the antidote to cliches then just having a very clear vision for your film,
I'd say
a
so.
purpose?
Right?
A clear vision and effort.
Trying?
You know, it's funny. I compared Tomb Raider in that article that I wrote about. I compared Tomb Raider to Jumanji, the new release one, the Welcome to the Jungle. And it's funny because Jumanji also has more personality than this one, Pacific Rim 2. And the thing is, like, Jumanji has a vision. They have a thing that they want to do, and they did it. And Pacific Rim 2 does not have that.
Right.
Right. Ultimately, it doesn't take us to any new place. It's
Right.
the monsters show up, and they have to be defeated.
And this is the thing when new
What the last one
filmmakers
was about.
Yeah.
when new filmmakers develop a movie, they're always terrified of being cliched, and they're terrified of being the same as someone else. And the thing is, really, what you need to do is just do whatever it is you think about, whatever it is that you want your vision to be. Then do that, even if it does include cliches, and that's totally fine. But don't fall into this whole, chasm where you're just making a movie because you have to, or make a movie because it's required, and then fill in the gaps along the way.
Must be hard making a movie because you have to.
It's weird because
must be rough.
No, because Pacific Rim 2 and what was the last one that we did?
Death Wish?
Tomb Raider,
yeah.
Tomb Raider and Pacific Rim 2 both felt like they had to be made.
Yeah.
They
didn't feel like they had a lot of passion behind them.
Exactly.
They're flat.
Yeah.
I felt like John Boyega put some passion into this.
Yeah, I like his.
And I felt like what's her name, Alicia Vikander.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Put a lot of passion into Tomb Raider.
Right.
Quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think there's like this overarching passion that has to connect everything together, and that comes
for the writing
from the writer and the director and the DP.
Yeah. Those guys got to care too, not just the actors.
Yeah.
Honestly,
exactly.
the thing that felt like it had any like creativity put into it was the monster design.
Well, and the fighting. I thought the choreographed fight scenes were pretty dope.
Yeah, they were well done. They were better than Transformers.
Yeah,
they do
they're way better than Transformers.
They do big giant fighting scenes much better.
Yeah, Transformers is cut and roll around buildings. This one was like punch.
Did you notice them make the point about emptying the city?
Yeah.
I thought that was
I didn't
really
hear them
funny
talk
that
about
they
that,
wrote in a whole little bit to explain that no innocent people are going to be killed in our city destruction.
Right.
Did they? I didn't catch that.
So there was right as the monsters are descending on that Japanese city just outside of Mount Fuji there. Mm-hmm. You see people run into this underground shelter thing that collapses onto the ground.
Yeah.
And then I think it was John Boyega's character communicates with home base, who says, "Okay, we've confirmed that the city is empty. All the people are underground in protection."
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that at all.
Yeah.
I was like devastated when that happened, when that thing went underground, and then there was like still a bunch of people that didn't make it.
Obviously, these are all over the city because they all got out.
Oh, okay.
So all those buildings they're smashing and knocking down, it's just for fun. They're empty.
See, no, okay, so that's funny because I had a different context for the movie then. Because every time that they smash buildings, I'm like, there's so many people getting killed.
Well, apparently they cared about that, you know?
Because they had a sword go through a building at one point, and they cut to inside the building, where we see the sword come out and come right back out, and people are like falling through cracks and stuff. I'm
yeah,
like,
well, that was before the building was... No, that was in Australia.
Yeah, that was different.
That was in Australia, a different scene.
Well...
But the city in...
I like my context better.
The city in Japan was emptied out.
Well, that's good. Don't want anyone to die.
Too much pushback. Too much pushback from all these
Batman.
City destruction movies.
Yeah,
you know, between Transformers and the Marvel and DC universe, we've seen so many skyscrapers just obliterated like they're made out of sand.
They did the one thing where they took the gravity whip and was like yanking down buildings.
Yeah,
I thought that looked actually really cool.
Yeah.
Like the way the buildings fell over was really satisfying.
Yeah.
You know, the gravity whip's a real thing the military has.
All right then.
Same weapon.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Pulse, the pulse whip too.
Cool.
And the Jaegers.
And the Jaegers.
In fact, this was a documentary. That's why it was so cliched, because it was real.
Oh. Well, this is a masterpiece now.
So a cliched movie can be good.
Yeah. Just not this one.
If it has enough vision behind it.
Yeah, I think
and
if
originality,
you're
it has enough originality.
I don't think it has to be original because Avatar definitely wasn't.
Well, it did. It was though.
No, you're right. No, it was. I don't know. What's another movie that's not original? I feel like it doesn't need originality if it has some sort of overarching point to get to. You know, if you're doing it for a point, I think it's fine.
Is there such thing as overuse of cliche in a good movie?
No.
Right.
I don't
that's
think
the thing.
so.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's like we just don't really care so much about it if the rest of the movie around it is strong.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
If it has a clear idea
Yeah.
and a purpose for what they're doing,
I would say so.
It's okay to do some cliched lines, sprinkle it through, you know. But.
We talked about this on Tomb Raider too, where it's fine to know where things are going as long as it's interesting. You know?
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think it's best to stay away from it as much as humanly possible.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Dee's in the favor of cliches.
No, I'm not. I don't think so.
What?
Take a stand, man.
No, I don't think so.
I think you should stay away from them as much as possible. They're not inherently bad, but I think there should be effort put into writing to consciously avoid going into unoriginal dialogue.
I would say what you said the first part is it.
Yeah.
Is that effort should be there.
Yeah.
And if making cliches is part of the effort, that's fine. I think if making cliches is what you do because you don't feel like putting in the effort, that's the bad thing. I would say that's the bad thing.
I guess then I would say my personal taste is as little cliched as humanly possible.
That's impossible.
Well, you just don't get it, do you?
That's what I'm talking about.
Cliche.
You heard it here on the Talkies. We'll see you next time. I'm Kenny.
He's Kenny.
I'm Kenny.
Goodbye. I'm Kenny, and Kenny. See you next time.
I'm D.
I'm D.
That's impossible.
That's impossible.
You ought to be in pictures.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice would thrill a nation. Your face would be adored.